All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the STHEALTHY Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. STHEALTHY Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All STHEALTHY Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
You're listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Mariah Humphreys.
And today we're doing a show all around the emails you listeners have sent to us. We've got several to go over here, a couple comments, a couple questions, and some pretty cool stories. So we're going to get into all of that. Before we do, though, if you guys like the show, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Rate and review the show. Written reviews go a long way, and 5 stars is always best. If you want to ask us a question and get your story or comment or question featured on an episode coming up, you can reach out to us on our social medias. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, and there's a contact button on our website, thenorthernhunter.com. That'll send us an email directly to the inbox. And while you're there, we have a shop page and a partners page. The shop has some merch items in there, logo wear, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, all that good stuff. And then the partners page is a bunch of great companies that have decided they believe in what we're doing. They want to help us out, and we've got discount codes with them. All that's listed there on the website or in the show notes of this show. So make sure you look there to get your discount code. If you use that, it helps them and it helps us. And all of that gear is hunter related. It helps get you out in the field. So we appreciate all the support and the comments and the emails. So without further ado, we're just going to dive right into these things.
Here we go.
The first one I wanted to cover is from Edward. And this one actually came in a little while ago. We haven't done like a listener email show for a bit now.
Mm-hmm.
So this one came out in mid-September, or he wrote in mid-September, Edward did. But it was in reference to I believe it was a show you and I did, Mo, while you were gone, Dalton.
Okay.
And I had brought up that video of the wolf and the bear seemingly hunting together.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody that hadn't seen that one, I believe, I don't remember where the video was posted, if it was on the Alaska News website we normally like to go to. KTOO. I can't remember if it was there or if it was on Outdoor Life, but it was on one of those two. If you just search brown bear and wolf hunting together, you'll find the video.
Seems like I saw that on Outdoor.
It might be an Outdoor Life thing.
I think that's where I saw it too.
Yeah.
Basically what it was is Fish and Game had a trail camera set up, and I mean, whoever set that trail camera,
Oh, yeah.
man, they do an amazing job. So there was a cow, moose, and a calf that were walking down this trail, and they have just come into frame on this camera when a brown bear attacks the cow, moose. And then as she's fighting off the bear, a wolf jumps past the brown bear and chases the calf out of frame. And it cuts off. It's only like a 10-second video, like most trail cameras have.
Yeah.
But really interesting. Hard to tell exactly what's going on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could have just been happenstance. Could have just been coincidence. Could have been intentional. Who knows? I mean, we've all seen those Disney movies.
Shots fired. Well
so,
played.
but Edward wrote in shortly after that, and he said, referring to your latest show where you mentioned the footage with the grizzly and the wolf hunting together, we have run into an interesting phenomenon here in Michigan when running black bears with hounds. Since wolves have been introduced back in 1995, the black bears have made some adjustments, it seems. Obvious ones are the normal things you would expect, but an interesting one is that the bigger bears are starting to tree. Traditionally, a black bear around and over the 350-pound mark will stand and fight the hounds instead of climbing a tree. Now, the bigger bears are treeing after running a short distance when they're in wolf country. Usually, after about a mile, they seem to tree, and in wolf country, we have to get there or get to the tree quickly because if we don't, the wolves will attack the hounds that are baying the bear. It has become common enough that it seems very intentional that the big Bruins are letting the wolves do their dirty work, and when the job is done, they come down out of the tree without a scratch and go about their business. Coincidence, perhaps, but it seems like they're learning new tricks. I was just in awe when I read that. I mean, to see the different ways that changing the animals and environment can change the behavior of other things is just pretty phenomenal. I thought that was a fascinating thing to notice.
And he said since 1995?
I guess that's when they reintroduced wolves in Michigan, from what he's saying there. Now, and I don't know if he's below the bridge or above the bridge.
Wait a minute. Reintroduced wolves or reintroduced hound hunting for black bears?
He says here, since wolves have been introduced back in 1995,
okay,
the black bears have made some adjustments.
So I wonder if the pressure didn't just make the bears tree more easily.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
And then the wolf population is now so great because anybody that understands wolves will tell you that if you howl and bark like a dog and things like that, like say a coyote does, coyotes are pretty quiet in wolf country.
Yeah.
You know, because I know the wolves will come kill them.
Right.
I wonder if it's not just a happy coincidence for the bears that they learn, okay, when I get chased by these dogs, I go up a tree and they can't get me. And if that's a learned behavior, and then it just so happens that when the wolf packs that are now more prevalent across the state have just learned, well, these are easy dogs to kill. And so when we hear them, we just go get them.
Yeah.
And the black bears are just the beneficiaries of said wolf population.
Yeah.
But either way, it is interesting to see that.
And that's what he was saying. He says, you know, it could be just coincidence or it could be, you know, whatnot. But he says, apparently it's been happening pretty commonly.
Huh.
Right.
He's noticed it more and more as they hunt.
I'd be interested to talk to this guy about hound hunting black bears.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah. We should reach out to this guy.
Yeah.
So Edward, we'll be emailing you.
Yeah, that'd be a great topic.
We did get another one kind of along the same lines, asking what bear is best? I'm going to say brown bear.
False.
False?
Black bear.
Black.
All right, so that's a tribute to a favorite TV character of mine. Our second question is brought to us by
no further explanation to that.
Yeah, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then
there you go.
Look it up.
There you go.
So our second question is brought to us. It's not really a question, but we got this one earlier in September. This is from David. He starts out in his email and he says, I can't thank you guys enough for the great content y'all have created. I've listened to almost all of your podcasts. Bravo. And it has helped me bait bears down in the lower 48 and finally have a new show up on camera. However, I made a DIY black bear hunt trip this year in Alaska in the fall, and I was finally able to capitalize on my first black bear. I've hunted hard for 3 years with not a single bear on the ground. I believe I've learned more from black bears because of this. If I got one on my first try, I would have never obsessed about black bears and gone on this journey. From navigating regulations to hours of great content about hunting with your podcast, I felt comfortable enough to take the leap and try to kill a black bear in a state I love and have seen black bears in regularly. He goes on to mention that he came up and hunted with a friend, and then he says, to spare you in the details, the only black bear I saw on our trip was the one I was able to harvest. The local police station was able to handle all sealing requirements with ease. I just called ahead and they were happy to meet me. Maybe something to add in your podcast. If there isn't a local fish and game agency, call ahead and ask if the local police station can handle the sealing requirements.
That's a very good point.
So like the wildlife troopers.
Yeah, very good point.
He says, I flew home with a cooler and some freezer packs, and it's now in my freezer awaiting to get to a taxidermist I can trust. Thank you again for an amazing podcast. And then he included a photo with his bear. I responded to David, said congratulations, and we exchanged some pleasantries there. He then responded with a follow-up email. He said, thank you guys again. I really appreciate everything you all have done and continue to do. Not bragging here, just asking for some advice. I had the skull measured by a local police officer, image attached for the proof in parentheses. So I did some research on the record sizes, and biggest skull found is 23 and 10/16 inches. This is for black bear. Now you need to await 60 days to have an official do it, etc. I don't want to somehow mess this up or take it to the wrong person. So what's your best advice? Any recommendations or tips are welcome. Is this bear skull really within an inch of the world record? So the world record was a found black bear, 23 and 10/16.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's bear measured length of 14 even and width of 8 and 8/16.
Man, that's
massive skull.
Tank.
22 and 8/16.
Man.
Unreal.
I have two emotions when I hear that. One is basically the noise I just made. Like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's an amazing bear. The second is I'm almost like, it's awesome that it's his first bear, but there's almost not much to look forward to now.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, hunting bear isn't fun and, you can just do it for the enjoyment of it, but like,
yeah,
you're never, chasing the next bigger one.
You're not going to top that. Yeah.
And as your first, amazing job. Amazing job. And
fantastic.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
but it's
what did
I heard a story about I think it was a 12 or 13-year-old that went on a moose hunt.
Okay.
And got like a Boone and Crockett bull moose. And I'm like, you're like 12 or 13. Like, what if you shoot a 30-incher next year? It's going to look like nothing, But
it wasn't it. Was it Dustin Huff that shot that deer in Indiana?
Oh, the Huff buck.
Yeah, the Huff buck. Yeah,
I have no idea.
Because he was asked. I listened to a podcast. He was on. He was asked like, "What are you going to do now?" Because you always, you said you're always looking for one bigger every year.
Yeah.
What are you going to do now? And he goes, "Go back to where I was before I shot this one."
Yep.
Right? That's kind of what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still just as fun. I'm not trying to say it's not. So like.
Right.
My other pointer on this one, or thing that I noticed, was just his attitude about it.
Mm-hmm.
Baiting bears, not getting a lot of success, getting some on camera, being excited about that, keeping trying, being obsessed.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
To just stick it out.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I found interesting about it is that he's only ever gotten the opportunity at one bear.
Yeah.
So basically, this is his introduction to killing bears in Alaska, and this is what he shoots.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Incredible. Now, so 22 and 8/16. So, but 22 and a half for all intents and purposes.
Right.
He said it has to wait 60 days, and he sent me, just for the record, he sent me the sealing permit that was filled out and measured by the sealing officer.
Right.
So this is not just him with a set of calipers and a tape measure in his garage. This is the official measurement of the Alaska Fish and Game record.
Right.
That it was sealed and recorded as this. So he said that after 60 days, when it dries, and I recommended him. I said have it measured by SCI and Boone and Crockett.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you care to do that. And then after it dries, get it officially measured by both parties, and then see where you land and email us back and let us know.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Obviously, the interesting part with bears is with every other trophy animal that has headgear, that's how you measure it. With bears, it's so subjective, right? We term bears as big because we say, oh, that's a 9-footer.
Right.
Or with a black bear, okay, that's a 6-foot bear, or that's a 6.5, or a 7 if it's big, right? Like that's a 7-foot bear is a huge bear for a black bear. Some do get bigger, but not many.
Right.
And so, but there's no way to know how big that skull is. Sometimes they're meatheads, and when you take all the meat off the skull after you kill that thing and clean it up,
right,
and you think, man, this thing is old, he's big, this was like a 7-foot black bear, and that 7-foot black bear might only have a 17-inch skull. They just don't have the right genetic for it.
That's what most interior bears are.
And then sometimes guys will shoot a 10-foot brown bear, and it's 27 instead of 28, or it's 26 and a half. I've heard of plenty of guys that shoot monstrous bodied brown bears that do not make over 28 inches, which is the minimum Boone and Crockett all-time measurement.
I was going to ask, so, and this is maybe out of my own ignorance, but I just never looked into that. They only measure off of skull for Boone and Crockett?
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't count your squared dimensions?
Yeah, SCI is the same way.
Are they really? Okay.
Yeah, it's skull only on bears. And so you can have what you think is a huge bear, and you can say, man, this thing is ancient looking. He's over 10 foot, and he might not have that big of a skull.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Without giving too terribly much detail, I met a guide this year that showed me a photo of a bear that his client had killed a couple of years ago. And if you do enough digging, then you'll figure out who did this. His client shot the biggest bear shot in Alaska since 1961, 2 years ago.
Really?
The skull was over 30 inches.
Good night.
Unreal. He has a photo of it on the measuring table at camp, and the width is 11 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. So that one you look at and you go, is that a short-faced bear or a dirty polar bear or what's going on here? And then you shoot it and then you wonder, okay, how big is his head really? And they measured it and it scored monstrous.
Man.
Wow.
Huge skull. So the point is you really don't know what you get until you skin out the head and then take the meat off of the thing and then measure it.
Right.
So, it's not like David was out there saying, this one, I think he's going to be world record. This just happens to be just a stroke of good luck, really.
Right.
And that's what makes it so special because, wow, I had no idea. And he was already happy enough just to kill a big black bear.
Yeah.
Because it's a big bodied bear.
Mm-hmm.
But then to add the fact that it's going to score in the top bracket ever of black bears killed for skull size, that just has to make you smile. So congrats, David. We're all jealous, and we would appreciate map coordinates. And we'll be in touch.
Well, and it's one of those things where luck becomes you get more lucky the harder you work. You can say that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like this guy put in a huge amount of work leading up to this bear.
Thomas Jefferson quote. I find that the harder I work, the more lucky I am.
Yeah.
I think that's what he said.
Yeah. And it sounds like that. Yeah. This guy put in a lot of work towards that. Just for anybody new to bear hunting, like this guy was, go into the squared measurement system that is used for scoring bears, and how it compares. I mean, I know you just talked about but as far as the waiting for it to dry and all of that, measurement.
So the hide measurement. So on a bear, I mean, I grew up hunting bears since I can remember. Saw my first bear from a tree stand when I was 7.
Yep, there you go.
And so the way you measure a bear, usually, we'll talk about like a 10-foot bear, and that's talking about the squared measurement. So first you lay it out on the ground, right, and you get it out as straight as you can, so that there's not like folds in the skin, except like in the armpits where there's a little extra skin, right? And you lay it down on its back usually. And you'll measure from the tip of the tail to the nose. And let's say that's 9 foot.
Yeah.
Right. And then
no stretching.
Right. Until you give it to taxidermist and he'll stretch it out. Right.
Exactly.
And then you measure the width, which is toe to toe. Right. And you just kind of try to get the arms in their natural
position. Across the shoulders.
Across the shoulders, right. From one toenail to the other.
Yeah.
Right. Tip to tip there. And let's say it's 9.5, 9'6".
Yeah.
So what would that bear be squared?
I didn't hear what your length measurement was.
It was 9 foot.
9 foot. So you just add them together and then divide by 2.
Correct.
That's just your average.
9'3".
So 9'3".
So that's how the squared system works. So we say a 10-foot bear. Well, he may have been wider than he was longer. He may have been longer than he was wide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But typically, a 10-foot bear would be.
And that's the deceiving part is when you get those like the longer but lankier bears, and you get the shorter and fatter bears, and which ones you perceive to be bigger.
It's interesting how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been surprised.
Yeah. See, I had that one black bear that it was 6'6" long and 6'6" wide.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Perfectly
big
square.
Black bear.
Yeah.
For the interior.
That is a very good interior.
That one that I shot with my bow with you a couple of years ago, James, in the stand there, squared 610, and that's
610.
That's the biggest interior bear I've shot.
What
was
since
that
then.
thing was
The one I shot
tank
before
for
that
interior.
was 6.6, and up to that point, that was the biggest black bear.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have to
What was
either
the
shoot
skull
one
on it?
bigger or
Well,
just take other people hunting.
Hey, what was the skull on that 610?
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and measure it.
See,
No.
on my 6.6 bear, I think my skull was like 15 or 16 inches, maybe.
Oh, yeah,
it was small.
Yeah,
And then the next bear I shot, that was a boar. And then
Mm.
I shot a sow a year or two later.
yeah.
That was a smaller squared. It wasn't tiny, but it wasn't a huge bear.
Right.
I think it was around 6 foot or right under. But the skull was a lot bigger. It was like 17-inch skull.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Much
Wow.
bigger on that sow, which, different area too, but still an interior black bear.
Right.
But so just like we we're talking about how the actual trophy score of an animal,
Mhm.
of a black bear specifically, or a
Yeah.
bear is,
I want to say that 610 was over 18.
okay. I mean,
Um,
that would seem right. If it wasn't, it'd be,
Yeah,
Mm.
I'm pretty sure it was over 18. It might have been 19 and change, but
Mhm.
yeah, it wasn't Boone and Crockett, which is
Right.
20.
remember what that one, my 7-footer my dad shot, what that one came out to be?
I want to say mid to high 18s, if not
Really?
19. Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
somewhere in the same range. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so for the skulls, it's the same style of measurement, right?
Length and width added.
Length
yeah.
and
Except
width
that you
added.
add it instead
Yeah,
of
yeah,
divided,
yeah,
right?
It's,
Yeah,
not
it's
square,
not-
it's not a squared measurement,
Right,
right?
it's not
So
an average.
There's one other animal that's measured like that,
Mm.
and it's the wolf. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Notice how I pronounce wolf?
Yeah.
Yep. And for the people wondering why you wait 60 days, it's because the drying process will shrink to its final form.
Yeah,
You
correct.
don't want to have which I don't know. I struggle with a little bit. I mean, maybe I don't know how much shrinkage you would really accrue on
It's not
average, or if it's
much.
uniformed, or if it's kind of
from
situational, but I don't know. I think it's a good it's a good practice. I don't really have a problem with the practice.
it's not a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I shot that big wolf, right? And I scored it, but not green. It was a few days old.
Mhm.
So it might be the first several days where there's a big difference, I imagine.
could be. Yeah.
And then, they just give it 60 days. That way there's kind of a uniform,
Mm.
after 60 days, they're all going to
Yeah.
be the same. That's probably why that's there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so
Cool. Well,
that covers that one.
congratulations on a big old bear. And
Yeah.
guys, if you would like us to, talk about, if you have any success stories that
Yeah.
you'd like to tell us about, if you, excited about it, and, maybe we'll talk about it on the show, especially if it has something to do. Maybe you've asked us a question before
Mhm.
and went out on your hunt and were successful. Definitely, send us the story, send us some pictures.
Absolutely.
We're always hyped up to see those things. And if
Yeah.
it's a real cool story, we'll tell it on the air. So
Yep. Absolutely.
feel free to reach out to us. Mo, why don't we take a quick break and then we'll dive into some questions. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code The Northern Hunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. All right, folks. So we love getting questions from you about pretty much any season, any time of the year, how it pertains to hunting in Alaska, or really hunting in general. If you've got gun questions or anything like that, we love answering those as well. This question, I'm ashamed to say, kind of fell through the cracks, but we are getting to it before the time is here. So let's. I'll just go ahead and read it. So Andrew writes into the show. He's asking about moose hunting. So he says, "Hey guys, loved the episode 44 on early lessons in moose hunting." Man, that was 44.
Whoa. And that was a while ago.
That seemed like yesterday.
It's like almost 20. Yeah, it's 16 episodes ago.
Yeah. So
Wow.
anyway, episode
boy.
44 on the early lessons in moose hunting.
Mhm.
Seems to me that most or all of the tactics you talked about are for attracting bulls. Any advice for someone who has drawn an antlerless tag? He's drawn one for a small area of the state. Not going to give too much away there. He says he's also, and this is a cool factor. Remember in the last episode, you put forth a little bit of trivia towards the end of it, and you were asking about, you Dalton. I guess the guys can't see us.
Yeah,
Right.
The listeners can't see who I'm looking at here. So Dalton, you put forth a bit of trivia asking if there was a shotgun season here in Alaska,
Mhm.
and I said I thought I'd seen something about it, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
You said there was. We would do some research into it. Well, this guy got one of those. So he said, so there is shotgun seasons for moose here in Alaska, because for this draw tag that he got, this antlerless moose tag, he says he's limited to using a shotgun, so it has to be within 100 yards or so, which is reasonable with a slug.
Mhm.
If you get a good slug and a
Mhm.
good rifle, good rifled slug barrel. Let's see. So his hunt is in November, so it's a later season antlerless
Mhm.
hunt. Any advice you guys have is much appreciated. So one, congratulations on drawing a tag. That's we just did a whole episode
Right,
about that too. But all of us here have killed moose. We've all done a lot of moose hunting. But Dalton, you have actually successfully done a antlerless moose hunt in the past.
Mhm.
So what would you say you did differently than when you were looking for bulls from
Well,
experience?
I drew an antlerless moose tag many years ago.
Mhm.
I was still a teenager and I qualified for the youth permits.
Okay.
And so I applied.
That must have been like right after you got back then.
Yeah,
It was
wasn't
shortly, like a
yeah.
year
wasn't
maybe.
long after.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very shortly after I moved back from overseas. But I got a antlerless moose tag. I'm pretty sure it was antlerless. Not
It was.
Yeah, it was antlerless. So let's see here. Obviously, I wasn't hadn't spent a lot of time back in Alaska hunting yet.
Right.
So at the time, it was just kind of tag along with my dad, and we hunted an area that he had hunted a lot before for bulls, and I'd been there before looking for bulls, and I drew the tag, and he said, "Sweet, now we can shoot a bull or a cow."
Right. Yeah.
And it wasn't long into that season, and I shot a cow.
Yeah.
But we were hunting the exact same area that we were hunting for bulls. Basically, just hunt where there's a lot of moose.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It always seems like the areas near to town where these cow permits are areas that if you go looking for a bull, all you see is cows, right?
That is
'Cause
very true.
all of us see cows routinely if we're hunting around town here in the
Mhm.
evenings while we're still working during
Right.
the work week. If we hunt somewhere not too far distant out of Fairbanks, it seems like you see a cow all the time.
Yeah.
And
Definitely the most prominent.
And if you don't, then you're probably going to move spots in a couple of days or a couple of evenings of hunting,
Mhm.
because if you don't see cows, then you pretty much determine there's not a whole lot of moose around here right now.
Right.
So most of us know where the cows hang out because we're looking for bulls there, and that seeing cows just reassures us that there are bulls somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's pretty much all we did. Like I said, I wish I could be more of a help on that, but that was a long time ago now.
Well, the biggest difference I would think between the two would be with cows, you're not necessarily, especially this time of year, you're not attracting them in the way you would a bull during the rut.
Yeah.
Correct. You're not going to be calling a cow in for a fight.
Right.
Mhm.
You're not going to be, the cows are going to be where they're going to be.
Mhm.
So I think playing into kind of what you just said, lean back on
Yeah.
prior moose hunting experience.
Yep.
If you have any, you didn't really say if you had any, but if you have any prior moose hunting experience, especially in this region, just fall back on that. Where there's bulls, there's cows. Where there's cows, there's bulls. Where there's moose,
Yeah.
there's moose. But a lot of your tactics are going to be a bit different
Mhm.
because you're
Yeah.
going to be more reliant on patterning. You're going to be more reliant on stalking or ambushing.
Yep.
Primarily, whether you're able to bring some form of a tree stand in there, or
Yeah.
you're able to figure out where these cows are hanging out, where they're bedding, work your way in.
Yep.
November, there might be some snow on the ground. Most of the time there'll be snow on the ground, depending on what part of the state he's in.
There's snow where he's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you'll have to take that into consideration, of course, but also where there's snow, there's lots of footprints. So might even make your job a little bit easier.
Exactly.
But pretty much instead of focusing on sitting in one spot and trying to call a bull to you, you've got to go to the cow is the biggest difference. Or set yourself up where you know the cow's going to be.
Yeah.
If you know that she beds in this spot pretty regularly, she walks down and waters here pretty regularly, set yourself up for an ambush somewhere in between there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And especially with a shotgun. I mean, 100 yards is still a decent ways.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to close that gap.
I would say with a November hunt and with us knowing where he's going, which part of the state, you have the terrain to get up high in glass.
Yeah, that's very true.
Moose are going to be herding up. When Mo and I have gone out this time of year in October, November, the moose aren't rutting. They are herded up and they're going to be huddled together. They defend themselves better against predators when they're huddled up. The bulls aren't fighting each other anymore. Sometimes they'll spar and they'll knock into stuff and just doing what bulls do. But it's not because of the rut. They're not going to be pushing cows around and harassing one another. And I've seen groups of moose in November before that number over 20. It's herds of moose. It's a crazy concept because the rest of the year they seem like they're just dire enemies and they
very
can't
solitary.
stand each other and they're always cruising looking for each other. And the only ones that are together are multiple cows with one bull that's keeping all the other bulls away.
Yeah.
But you'll find them herded up, and so they're going to be easier to find, relatively speaking. But for a couple of reasons. There's no more leaves on the trees.
Yes.
There's no more leaves on the willows and the brush. So getting up high, you'll be able to see through the terrain better. You'll be able to see through that brush better and look down on some river and creek bottom type country with your elevation to your advantage. And you hope that they're herded up together.
Yeah.
And that you can find, because, it's just, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I think 10 moose are easier to spot than one moose, right? So, if you can catch them bedded up on a hillside in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And then also figure out and do some homework and figure out, all right, in this area of the state, what are they eating this time of year? Call your local biologist and
that's
ask
a good
them,
idea.
what are they eating this time of year? Now that all the leaves are off the trees, where are they going to be hanging out? Do they like being in the river bottoms, or are they going to be up high trying to see where the wolves are and defend themselves better? And so I would do that.
And that was one thing I really liked when we had Jeff Day on. Now that was obviously pertaining more to bulls, but he really dove into the science of hunting, figuring out all of that information, doing your research ahead of time. And so I think that's super important.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say it's a guarantee they'll be herded up this time of year.
No,
but it's not uncommon at all to see groups of 20. Yeah. I've seen bigger groups than that. And especially if you get like a real steep decline in temperature real quick.
Yeah.
The thing I would focus on a lot with that is they are easier to spot, but there's more eyes.
Exactly.
There's more eyes. It's easier to see them. It's also easier to see you. So make sure you're covering yourself properly for the season. If you're in snow, make sure you're dressed appropriately.
Yep.
If you are, trying to make a stalk, don't just be, walking through in the open. They're going to be a little bit more wary of predators right now because, rut's over. They can see, they know that food's a little bit more scarce, and this is the time when they're on the menu for a lot of predators that are still awake. So definitely make sure your stalking game is on point if you're going to be going that route.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've talked about walking up on moose before. And if you stay downwind and you stay quiet and don't move when they're looking at you, you should be able to get within 100 yards fairly easily.
If you wear like a white snow camo suit
especially.
and belly crawl with your shotgun,
100
yards shouldn't be an issue, even if there's 5 or 10 moose there.
And that's what I meant by dress appropriately. Wear white. Wear some kind of
just
matching
slow,
environment camo.
Go slow, play the wind, and belly crawl. And you should be able to get on
The biggest thing I would say is if they're looking at you, don't move.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
If you can do that, like I imagine you could crawl right up to them.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And make sure you use a good slug in that shotgun
Yeah.
too. Make sure you're not just using the cheap box of slugs off the shelf. Get you some what are those, like the Brennickys? The real good penetrating slugs, the ones that fly really good.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a little late in the game now. I mean, he said the hunt happens in November, so hopefully you have a good barrel for that thing too.
Yeah.
And practice. Make sure you're capable. If 100 yards is your limit with that shotgun, make sure you can take an ethical shot at 100 yards with that limit.
Right.
Yeah. Send us pictures.
Absolutely. I would love to see this one.
I would love to see photos of the terrain and how you hunted it and kind of hear your story.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're successful, let us know how it goes. I'd love to hear about that. You don't hear a lot about shotgun specific moose hunting up here.
Right.
It would be kind. It would be really neat to hear that side of it, especially if you end up killing one.
Yeah.
And see how that goes. So
yeah, absolutely.
Good luck and be safe.
Yep. And I hope that this reaches you beforehand, but if not, we'll be transcribing this into an email for you later tonight. And sorry we took a little while getting back to you. It's hunting season in Alaska, and we were very, very busy.
Yeah, it's been a busy fall.
Always is, right?
Yeah.
Always is. About to be a busy winter, which is going to lead into a busy spring.
It already is a busy winter.
Lead into another busy summer, which is going to... It's never a dull moment here in Alaska. If you're bored in Alaska, that's your own dang fault. So the next one kind of falls along the same lines of hunting and playing the wind.
Yeah.
We'll just say that with your stalking or setting up a ambush.
Yeah.
You want to play the wind. Well, we had Clayton right into the show. Love the podcast and have listened to 2/3 of your episodes and I'm catching up on the rest. Hopefully you're caught up by now. He asks, what's you guys' opinions or thoughts on scent masking products such as sprays, deodorants, and or laundry detergents? Thanks, guys. Hope you all have good luck this fall/winter.
Ozone, all the spray you can use. Wash your clothes. Sorry, right. I just hunt like you're hunting whitetails.
Exactly.
Tide Pods are a great glassing snack.
I forgot you're in that generation. Sorry.
Hey, I don't identify with it, okay?
Ooh, that's... Not helping yourself there, good buddy.
Back to the question. Didn't mean for that to turn into this.
So, I did reply to him, so he's heard our answer. But I felt like this was one that could be worthwhile to put on the show, so here we are. What I told him is that scent masking products are good. They're not going to be a detriment to your hunt. But the problem is a lot of people rely on them too heavily. Yeah. A lot of people think scent killer, I don't have to worry about the wind. It's not the case.
Yes.
If you are overconfident in your use of these products, it's going to be it's going to create problems for you if you fail to actually play the wind.
Yeah.
I kind of ranked them in order of, most to least effectiveness. I would say the least effective version, for me, in my experience, would probably be the sprays because it's just kind of a masking, coating. Not to say they don't work. If you want to spray your boots down or spray your pants down or something like that, it's not going to not help a little bit, but you're still going to have to make sure, if you're sitting in a tree stand at a bait or you're, hunting moose or hunting caribou, you still want to make sure that you're not basically directly in the wind path going to these animals because yes, it will cover you, but it's just a covering, it's not an impenetrable barrier.
Yeah.
Then I put the laundry detergents. There's several different makes and brands of these products, and each of them have a pretty extensive product list. I don't mind using that stuff. I don't really think it's 100% necessary if you just use unscented or detergent. Usually it's kind of the same thing. The good thing about the scent product detergents is it will, again, kind of put a barrier on that clothing. So it might not absorb as much scent in the transition process between going from the dryer to the field.
To then sitting in your truck and spilling coffee on it.
But then, I was to say, but then the problem with relying on the detergent is you do still want to be careful between that product. You know, you don't want to throw it in the truck and show up out to moose camp, as Chris says, smelling like Marlboro Reds and Old Spice, right?
Yeah.
So
the smell of the Alaskan redneck.
So you want to make sure if you are using that, you know, take it out of the dryer, or you're going to air dry it. Make sure you air dry it where you're not getting any kind of household smell good products you might have, or your wife might have around the house, you know, scented candles
or your
pets, or pets or anything
your
like that. Kids, yeah. Food, cooking in the kitchen. You know, it's like you want to make sure none of those smells get back into the clothing. So get it in a tote, get it outside, get it somewhere it's not going to get contaminated again.
Yeah.
The one I use that I think is just more of a, I don't know, it's a
real quick
necessity. I
want to add to the detergent thing.
Go for it. Yeah.
Something you can do with the detergent thing is something my dad has done a lot with traps,
Mm-hmm.
and he's probably done it with hunting clothes too. But is once you've descented them, you know, you run it through your detergent or whatever. Yeah, you have a tote, but he didn't just buy this tote brand new.
Right.
You bought this tote, you took it outside, and you let it air out. You maybe put some pine boughs in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say spruce or anything.
Yeah, spruce boughs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have pine trees here. What an idiot. But
Oh, I'm glad you said it.
anyhow, but yeah, take some spruce boughs, green ones, right off the tree, and put those in there, and then just leave those in there. Mix them in with your clothes
Because that's a natural.
scent.
That's how it's going to smell out there.
That's that is going to mask scent probably a lot better than having like you say when you get in a bear stand, you like to spray the tree with whatever your scent that you're hunting with because it masks your scent. It's a you know, it's not just a negative, it's a positive.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they're going to smell you up there anyway.
Right. Exactly.
But just to finish my opinions on these, and I'll let you dive in. The deodorant is the one I do use.
You do.
I do. And the only reason for that is because I am one stinky guy when I don't use deodorant. So I'm going to use deodorant regardless.
So it's just like a regular old speed stick, but non-scented.
Basically, yeah. It's there's several different brands. The one I picked up was Dead Downwind, I think is what it's called.
Okay. Where did you buy that?
Cabela's one time when I was down there in
really?
I think it was Cabela's. Might have been Bass Pro, but it was one time when I was down there in Anchorage.
That.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Non-scented scent masking
deodorant.
Antiperspirant deodorant.
Yep. And that's the one because like I said, I'm going to use deodorant anyways.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I don't even want to be around me. So
I'll say that name though, that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Right, exactly.
Dead Downwind. Huh.
But you know, they make big ones, they make small ones, you know, you get like the little 2.25 ounce bottles.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty compact, doesn't take up a whole lot of space.
Huh.
But that's one of those things where like it's not gonna hurt. And it might be better than even an unscented stick from the store that's still going to smell like soap or, you know, whatever else they put in there, aluminum and all that,
right.
All the chemicals and all that.
They work great.
Super effective. But that's the one I've more traditionally used just because, again, it's something I'm already using. Might as well use the scent free version.
Yeah.
The rest of those two, you know, and then there might be more products than just the detergents and sprays and deodorants. But I just don't really invest a whole lot into it. I carry one of those little powder bottles with me everywhere I go. It's right in my bino harness. I play the wind. I figure people did that for thousands of years.
Powder bottles. You mean like a windicator?
Yeah, like a windicator.
Okay.
I forget what my brand is. It's just the $2 one you can buy at Sportsman's Warehouse.
Yep.
And it works great. Lasts forever.
Mine ran out and I put flour in it.
Yeah. You know, yeah, exactly.
If all else fails, you can make cookies. I told that to my client on this last hunt. He got a real kick out of that.
Yeah, but yeah, flour, baby powder, you know, any of that stuff works.
Just don't get it wet.
Just refill it, you know, and that's all you do. You just shake it up, break that powder up, give it a squeeze, and whichever way the powder goes. Because that's the thing, like you might not feel any kind of wind on your face or anything. You might not see grass moving. There's still a direction the air is flowing.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to play that. And I would say learning to do that is more important than relying on, like, I wouldn't even use scent reducing products until you've learned to play the wind.
Yeah.
Use that to increase your ability once you have the skill. But work on the skill first. That's my opinion. What do you think?
The one thing that you didn't mention that I would bring up is ozonics. So this is a highly debated tinfoil hat internet discussion.
I love those.
Amongst the hunting crowd.
Very white-tailed deer hunter.
I think that's probably where it originated. People in the whitetail world are just fanatics about that part of hunting.
Right.
And that's fine. If you live in the lower 48, Oklahoma, Kansas, Ohio, those great whitetail states, right? That's fine. That's your bread and butter. And so I think the ozonics likely came about as a result of the whitetail hunting gizmo gadgetry world. And companies said, well, how else can we create scent deterring products?
Right.
So ozonics, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I say something wrong here, and I'm not an expert on it, I don't have them, but I know somebody up here that's successfully used them for a number of years now for bear baiting. So the way that I've heard it explained is you hang the little unit above your stand, and as it emits these particles, they attach to your scent molecules, which then makes them heavier and just drop straight down to the ground. So it doesn't eliminate your scent.
Gotcha.
But it keeps it more localized around your stand.
Yeah.
So the guy that I know uses them, especially for when he's hunting grizzly bears over a bait. Grizzly bears are a lot more picky on bear baits, whether or not they're going to come in if they smell you or not. And so he uses them in the event that he has a grizzly bear coming in. If the bear walks underneath of his stand, it's going to smell him. And he's had that happen before, and they've walked out of his life forever.
I've had that happen
without
too.
having a shot. Because even though he had the ozonics little unit running, it walked underneath the stand where all those scent molecules are dropping down to the ground.
Yeah.
So that's the theory. Now, to be fair, and to take the other side of the argument, this guy doesn't trust them enough that if it's windy, he doesn't even go. If he's targeting grizzly bears, he's outright said that before, that if it's windy, it doesn't matter if I have the ozonics because it's going to blow the air around too much and it won't even be able to do its job right.
Right.
So on a calm night in the bear stand, which is probably the majority of them, you're in the thick wooded country. There's usually not too much breeze.
Yeah.
If there is, then we're probably not hunting anyway.
Right.
Because it's not ideal conditions regardless.
I have sat in a tree stand when the wind is
howling.
Yeah. It's a little spooky. I'm not going to lie.
When
your whole stand
I just don't
is
waste my time anymore because they don't seem to come in.
I put a bait in a spot this year, and I may have mentioned this when we were talking about it in the spring, but it ended up right in the sweet spot for wind, apparently, because 100 yards from my bait, no wind.
Yeah.
I would ride in, nothing. I get in the stand, it was kind of calmed down. I'd sit there for hours and blowing. By the time I got back to my wheeler, there was no more wind.
Yeah.
It was where I put the bait. And I don't think that was 100% the reason I didn't have bears.
Right.
Because there was a lot of bears on the bait. I think they went off after the moose calves with all the timing and everything. But it was insane the amount of wind that just because, with the way the hills were, I was right in a dip between hills to get down lower. I was up high.
Oh, that was in the saddle.
Yeah, it was in a saddle.
That's right.
And kind of on the side.
Yeah.
It was the easiest access, which is,
just
usually
where those
where you go.
thermal currents are traveling over the saddle.
It must have been. It was insane. I've never, and I was right. I mean, where I was in a tree was up high enough, right? If I was down on the ground, it probably wouldn't have been as bad, but it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and one big difference too, where a lot of these products have probably come into existence, and maybe we've never really had a need for them up here, is terrain difference and animal difference.
Oh, animal difference, I think, is the biggest.
Because, like you said, a lot of this probably evolved from whitetail hunters.
Yeah.
And I know, Mo, you've done a little bit of whitetail hunting. I've done some whitetail hunting up in Ohio. I'm about to do some in Michigan. I'm going to go visit the in-laws and hopefully do some deer hunting there. And at least I can tell you from the Ohio experiences I've had, the terrain. Well, let's start with the animals first. So one, the whitetails seem to be a lot more skittish than anything up here. Really is.
Yeah.
They're a lot more pressured.
Yeah.
They know what people are.
How many hundreds of thousands of hunters are in Michigan every year?
Right. So they know what you are. They know what you smell like in most cases.
Yeah.
We're just going to say, in most cases.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, somebody will get into some really wild territory, and those, you're blessed and to be able to hunt in that area. But for the average guy going out on a weekend or after work or something like that, out past his buddy's cornfield, that's where those deer know what humans are. So you got to be a little bit more careful there. The other thing is a lot of deer hunting is with a bow. You know, rifle seasons in the lower 48 are very limited.
Yeah.
For example, in Kansas, your bow season is like months long.
Yeah.
Whereas your rifle season, you get a week or two, depending on which county you're in and all that. And so you get a lot more guys that are up close and personal because they're bow hunting.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of leads into the difference in terrain too, because up here we have a lot bigger hills. You know, at least in the area that I was hunting in Ohio, and this is not generalized for the entire country, obviously, but like where I was hunting in Ohio, it was a lot of old, like coal mining hills. And so it's kind of like when you go out towards Chattanooga and you can see all the dredge marks from the gold mining.
Yeah.
Similar thing down there. You look at the hillsides and you can see where it's actually been carved out, you know, years and years and years ago, and it's all grown back up.
Interesting.
But what that does, in my experience, is it creates a little bit more swirling wind effect. So, you know, you're not getting those one directional winds that just kind of consistently go, and you can play it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably end up wanting to use some of these products more in one of those situations because it's harder to play the wind in those conditions, right? It's changing often. It might just switch direction on you. Your thermals will be different.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see a use for them depending on your application.
Right.
For Alaska, though, for caribou, moose, honestly, even bear baiting. I mean, it might not be a bad thing to do. It won't hurt your odds at all.
Right.
As long as you're still doing everything you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I like that idea, using the ozonics, actually. That might be something I look into.
That's not a bad idea for the grizzly bears. I've never, I think you mentioned that to me, but I hadn't really thought about it.
For the listener's benefit, that the guy that I'm talking about is Tyler Friel.
Oh, okay.
He's a writer for Outdoor Life, and he's got a podcast, Tundra Talk Podcast. And I've asked him about ozonics before, and he doesn't even use the most expensive unit that ozonics sells. He uses one, I think it's still like $300.
Is it like the size of a thermocell, kind of?
From what I remember, I haven't looked him up in a couple of years since I asked him about it, but I heard him mention it on his show before, and then I want to say that he's written a couple of articles about using ozonics. So if you're interested in that, just look him up and sift through some of his articles, and I'll bet you could probably find something that he's detailed how he uses those. And like I said, it's like with anything, it's not going to be 100% guaranteed that, well, the bears won't smell you if you have ozonics. Well, and he doesn't pump it up like that. He looks at it through the realism of, if it's windy, it's not going to work. So it's not the wonder drug of scent killing. And for me, for everything else, if people ask me about, you know, scent control products, I've never been into it because I hunt the wind religiously, you know, and this is not to say that it doesn't have any effect, but brown bears have the greatest sense of smell of anything we have up here. But probably any bear, I suppose. I don't know. I suppose black bears could have the same number of olfactory nerve receptors, but I've been on a lot of brown bear hunts, and if you play the wind, it just doesn't matter.
Right.
As long as you are not upwind of those bears, they're just not going to smell you. It's physically impossible. And I think a lot of it has to do, and it makes sense the way that you, James, explained that, is our terrain is more open and more just naturally the way it is. We don't have those crazy little bowls and cuts, and our terrain is just bigger. And when the wind is going one way, it's probably going to stay that general direction until the front switches. You know, if you have a low pressure system going this way or that way, or if it's colliding, you might have some swirls. But usually on like spot and stalk type of hunts, when it's going one way, it's going to be going that way for a while anyway. And it's usually going to be going that way long enough for you to count on it going that way and make a stalk on that wind direction. So hunting the wind is the most important thing, not necessarily scent killer.
Right.
Now for predator calling, where you can't always pick a spot determined by wind direction, if you've only got an opening facing from one way and you're going to call, say, a little pond, and you've only got the opportunity to walk in from one side, then I could see using some scent killer products for doing that.
Right. Just to give you a little bit more of an edge.
Yeah.
You know, in an already kind of bad situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for big game hunting in the open country, bear baiting excluded and predator hunting excluded, just hunt the wind.
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Yep. That's the best skill you can develop
Yeah.
as far as scent control goes,
Yeah,
is your own placement.
I've never used like the Windicator stuff.
Yeah.
No, I've always just did what I seen in the Daniel Boone show when I was growing up, right? Finger in the mouth, stick it in the air. It works.
It does. With the lighter winds, like the very slow moving, it's tricked me a couple times.
I know I've done it so long, and I'll do it a few times, usually as I move, just to make sure. And typically, I get it right.
Nice. After a couple of weeks in the field, I don't want to lick my finger.
I wipe it off first. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
you use them dude wipes you got in your.
after a couple of weeks, harness. I just only food goes in my mouth.
Yeah.
After that point.
I don't know, man. The powder's $2. I'm not going to stress about it too much.
Yeah.
So.
I've just never.
And flour is free out of my wife's cupboard.
Anyway, so that's our opinion of scent products and how to use them, at least here in Alaska. If you're somewhere else, I mean, apply it as needed for your use.
Yep.
Let's see. We did get one more email here.
Mm-hmm.
No name at all, hardly a description. So,
Mm-hmm.
And that answers all of our questions for today.
If you're out, I don't know your name, but so
I think we have to bring some clarity to that.
So
this is kind this is kind of a correction / joke that just,
So during the portion of the show where we invite people to write in, we do say any comments, complaints, concerns, anything like that. If you have something that bothers you about the show, or you have something you want to discuss with us,
corrective criticism.
Yeah, we're open. If you have a different opinion, I mean, feel free to write us in. We love, and the email's best. But we love talking things, and hey, maybe you have a great point that we can get to.
So what was this email about?
So this person wrote in, didn't put a name or anything. So, but I appreciate it. And he pointed out a speech, I don't even know what you'd call it, but a habit of mine, I think, when I'm talking to you from across the table, and you say something, I'm like, oh yeah, yep. And then, so for anybody listening, if that bothers you, I guess I'm sorry, but not really.
Specifically,
it's how I talk. So.
Specifically, he didn't like the which it's not just you.
No,
we're all guilty of it. I think I caught myself doing it like a half dozen times already in this show.
Yeah,
and so
I don't talk as much as you guys, right? And so I've noticed it a lot. Like when you're, say, James, you're talking to Dalton, and I hear, or Dalton's talking to you, or we have a guest, and you're just like doing it, and I'm sitting here going, "Come on, that's enough already, right?" Exactly.
Yeah.
And but then I'll find myself, like when it's just you and me on the podcast, and you're talking a bunch, and I'll find myself doing the same.
Yep. It's probably something a lot of people do naturally, and they just don't notice it. It just gets kind of noticed on the show. But anyway. And you didn't leave a name, so we can't call you out. But we appreciate that you wrote in. We actually do. We're just messing with you a little bit.
We got a good laugh out of it, and we will try to work on it.
This has been a fun episode, right?
All right, well, Mo, let's jump into a break real quick, and then we'll hit these last couple of questions.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right. So one interesting one we got that this came in, I think, a week ago now, at the time of this recording. So Rick writes into the show, and he brought up something that, and he mentioned in his email here that it's not talked about a whole lot. So I figured we'd bring it up in this episode. So Rick says, liking the podcast, very informative and entertaining. I found you through Jeff Lund's podcast. So great guy, Jeff Lund is. Glad you're listening to him too. Let's see. I live in Washington but visit Alaska annually. I recently harvested a moose with several tapeworm cysts in the meat. So this subject is fresh in my mind. ADFG says 40 to 70% of moose and caribou have these cysts, but you don't often hear about them. And how do folks deal with the parasites in game, dealing with pets, worm cycles, etc.? Might be a good podcast conversation, which sounds like it will be.
Yeah, here we go.
And I wrote him back. Looks like same day, and kind of told him my experience. I have definitely found these cysts, the tapeworm cysts in meat. Typically, you're going to find it on, let's say, the haunches, some rib meat, stuff like that. And it just looks like little. It sounds gross, but pus balls basically is what they look like. When you get the meat home and you're inspecting it and you're cutting it up for consumption. And it is fairly common. I mean, it's not in every moose by any means. It's not, if you shoot a young moose, you might not have to worry about it so much if you're just shooting a spike or something like that. Typically tends to be in the more mature moose from what I've seen, what I've heard people talking about.
Okay.
But realistically, they're not something you have to worry about.
Yeah.
The tapeworm cysts or the tapeworms that create the cysts in these animals, they are parasitic, but they're not dangerous to humans.
Right.
They don't attach to the human digestive tract. And so what tapeworms typically do is they'll do just that. When they get into an animal, they'll get into the digestive tract, they'll kind of attach themselves to the walls, and then they'll grow as they get older.
Right.
And then they'll start, they'll spawn, and basically that's how they spread out is through the feces of the animal, is when they're spawning, and then they work their way into the meat, everything like that. It's pretty common, and it's not something that's just in game animals either. You find stuff like this in agricultural animals just as much. Anybody that's eaten pork, I'm here to tell you, you've eaten tapeworms and parasites.
Dead ones, ideally.
Yes. But and again, a lot of these ones, they're not dangerous to humans. So typically when we find these cysts, when we find, pockets of them or group, they're spread out all over the meat.
Yeah.
You just kind of cut them out, and that's more just for peace of mind. You don't actually even have to. You could grind it up with those in there, and it's not going to affect the flavor. It's not going to affect.
You're never going to know.
You're never even going to know it's there. Like once you grind it up, you're never going to see them. You're never going to taste them. They're not going to affect you negatively in any way. So as long as you can stomach getting past that process of seeing it go into the grinder, beyond that, it's not going to make any difference.
Do they die when you freeze them? Like if you're cutting,
not always.
If you're cutting up a roast, say like a back ham of a moose, which is quite the roast.
Oh, now I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, I know. if you're just cutting up a big chunk of meat to then freezer wrap it or vac seal it or whatever, and then you freeze it, and then you pull it out, say a month later, and it's been frozen at 20 below in your freezer for an extended period of time. Does that kill the tapeworm? I
believe, and I'm not going to say this with 100% like scientific confidence, but I believe I read that it takes 3 months for them to die in the freezer. So perhaps anything you've had from like last season that's maybe stood over. But cooking them, it's kind of like with trichinosis in bears, right?
Yeah.
That's also a parasite that's involved in that meat. Cooking it to well done or higher temps will will kill it. You don't always have to go to well done. I think, weren't you saying, Mo, you read it was 120 degrees would kill it? 130?
130,
Okay,
140.
Because I know depending on where you read it, some people will say even higher than that.
140 if you're doing it over extended cooking time.
Yeah.
Right.
160 if it's a shorter cook time.
If the internal temperature of the meat reaches 140.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're measuring
that's usually what we go with.
Yeah.
Now, for the with the tapeworms, personally, growing up in Alaska, cutting up moose from as long as I can remember, I remember asking my dad about them and he being like, yeah, whatever, they're in everything up here.
Right.
Tapeworms specifically, because you see them in the meat. They're, a few inches long usually, and you see, sometimes you'll even see them crawling if the meat's fresh when you're cutting it up.
Right.
And he's just like, yeah, whatever, it's just a parasite.
Yeah.
Okay, I found an answer.
And that's just the thought. So for me, it's never even a thought.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's what I felt it was interesting when he pointed out the fact that a lot of people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of how everybody up here is
yeah.
we know it's not going to hurt us. And it's a little bit gross, but that's hunting. That's the game, right? I mean, it's I would consider tapeworm cyst-ridden quarter off of a moose safer for me to eat than anything I'll find at the grocery store. So that's kind of my stance on
Alaska Department of Fish and Game has a statement about this. Freezing does kill tapeworms, but not the most common worm in bear meat, Trichinella, which is a species adapted for life in the cold north. So tapeworms 100% die.
Do they? Okay.
When you freeze them.
I'm wondering what I read then, yeah.
Yeah.
Good thing I didn't say it with confidence.
That's a good thing to know. So if you have, say, a moose that has several little cysts or tapeworms in it that you're somewhat concerned about, if you're worried about it, then freeze it and then forget about it.
Does it say anything about leaving it frozen for any duration of time? Like, I mean, can you just flash freeze it and that should kill them? Or
do tapeworms die when you freeze meat? This is on a different website. There's a lot of different little forum things.
I'm sure it depends on which. There's several different kinds of tapeworms even, so I'm sure it depends on the specifics. But
so from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, it says as long as you freeze it. So raw meat and parasites on Holistic Ferret Forum. Raw meat can and does carry parasites. This is fairly common knowledge. However, freezing meat for a minimum of 4 weeks at a temperature of -18 to -20 degrees Fahrenheit does kill the vast majority of parasites. So
the magic number is 4 weeks that we'll go with for today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
If you're concerned about it, then for your own peace of mind, freeze it for a month and then forget about it.
Yeah. And if you can't stomach the idea of eating the actual cyst, whether that's in burger meat or if you don't want to leave it on your roast, which a lot of people don't, I mean, it's unsightly. It's not good to look at. It again, won't affect the flavor, won't affect the texture. But, if you want to cut that out, you don't have to cut wide. Yeah. Just cut the actual cyst out.
Yep.
You don't have to waste huge, cut inches all the way around it or anything like that. Just get that cyst off the surface of the meat and you'll be good to go.
Yes. If the meat is discolored or smells funny, call Fish and Game, take them a piece and have it tested or at least get someone's professional opinion on it before you just grind that up with everything else and eat it.
Right.
That's what I would say to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Caribou is the animal that I've seen the most infection in.
Right.
Between bot flies and winter caribou that are burrowing under the hide of caribou to survive the winter, and then they'll hatch out the animal in the spring. Those
things are nasty.
Those things are gross.
Yeah.
That looks like some kind of an alien life form. And those will be attached to the underside of the hide when you're trying to skin out a caribou in the wintertime. If you're trying to keep the hide, you've got to go through and pick all the bot flies.
Yep.
Those little larvae out from under the hide, and it's nasty and it sounds gross because it is.
Right.
And I've also found little spots where they've actually burrowed in, and I don't know if those are bot flies or if those are different parasites, but I've seen more oddities in caribou than I have ever in moose.
I would say I agree with that. I've seen a lot more of them in caribou.
And tapeworms, I've seen a ton of them in brown bears.
Have you really?
It's just gross.
That makes
sense.
Oh, yeah.
They eat a lot of moose.
Nasty.
Right. Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Moose and rotten fish.
Right.
Well, and parasites are just more prominent in carnivores anyways.
Yeah. And fish.
I mean, and that's what a lot of people don't know. You can get trichinosis in moose and whatnot. It has been confirmed. It has been found. Wow. It's just extremely rare.
Yeah.
Because they're
I didn't know that moose could carry trichinosis.
Yep. And so, but it's going to primarily be in carnivores.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's black bear, brown bear, wolf,
Mm-hmm.
lynx,
Fox.
coyote, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Now that being said, part of his question was how to kind of handle this in regards to pets. You know, when you have other animals, a lot of people will raw feed their pets. And it's a pretty common practice, especially if you're a very successful hunter and you've just got a lot of meat.
Right.
And
A lot of sled dog people do that.
Right. Yeah. It is one thing you have to be careful of with pets because they have a very similar digestion tract to the animals that carry these things. So the tapeworms can affect your dog if you were to free feed them, or not free feed, raw feed them.
Yeah.
Meat that is infected with these tapeworms.
Interesting.
The reason, you know, you don't have to be overly cautious with it. It is a good thing to look into, though, or to make sure you are a little bit careful with. But if you do end up getting a tapeworm in your animal, it's a very easy thing to fix.
Yeah.
Like I said, those tapeworms, they just attach themselves to the digestive tract. And so if you catch it early enough, you can go to the vet and they have, I think there's 2 or 3 different brands of medication that you can get. So it depends on which vet you go to in your area. and
How
what
do
they use.
you figure out if your dog gets tapeworms?
There's usually worms in there.
Yeah, you'll see them in their
okay.
feces and stuff like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But basically what the medication does is you just feed it to your dog in a treat or a piece of cheese or whatever, you know, just like you would normal medication.
Piece of cheese.
And it works great, dude.
Really?
Yeah. And
Or a piece of raw meat.
or preferably without the worms. But what it does, it just causes them to detach themselves from the wall linings of the intestine, and they just flush them right out.
Yeah.
It's super painless. It's super quick. You know, and it's just, I think it's like a 1-week regimen of this medication you got to do. So if you are careful, but if some get through, you know, maybe you threw your dog a piece of meat that was, infested with these worms and he ends up getting some, not a big deal. Not something you really got to freak out about or fret about. You know, the biggest thing I said, you know, I ended with the email was don't let the fact that these tapeworms are there deter you from enjoying the game meat, from enjoying eating it, enjoying sharing it. You know, don't let it ruin the experience.
Yeah.
Whatnot, because it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But it is something that not a lot of people talk about. So I found that kind of interesting.
Interesting question.
Let's see. Jordan writes into the show next. And this one was actually directed at you, Dalton. So why don't you read that?
Okay, so this is Jordan. I'm going to scroll through this here. He says, "Hello. Thank you for putting on the work for this show. Well, I'm glad you noticed that we work hard."
Right.
It's nice to be noticed. He says, "I listened to your episode on caribou hunting while I was driving to go on a float for caribou. Some of the tips you recommended about finding a travel corridor were key to my buddy and I both harvesting caribou. Congratulations."
Very nice.
If I could convince our sound guy to play some audience cheering right now.
It's too much work to get that set up right now.
Okay, he goes on to say,
maybe post-production.
Yeah, he says, he goes on to say, "A question I have for Dalton is, what is the lightweight 8-inch cot you use with your Solitude tent?" He's referring to the Solitude Peaks 4-man teepee tent. The 8-inch cot, it's 8 inches off the ground.
Right.
And it's a full-length, relatively lightweight cot, very fast and easy to set up. It is made by Mission Mountain. You can buy them on Amazon for $120, I think.
Little tip for people listening. If you're listening in Alaska, the Mission Mountain website, if you go to their direct website, does not ship to Alaska.
Cool.
So you have to buy it on Amazon or some alternate source.
Okay, good to know. My wife and I bought 2 of those prior to our August fly-out deer hunt. And we were using that 4-man teepee, and we wanted the comfort of cots because we had the room on the plane. They weigh, I think, 4 pounds a piece, and they pack down pretty small. I think they're probably 16 inches long and 6 inches around packed down. They have 3 legs underneath. It's a bar that goes under the cot, and it has a little cam over locking bar to put the cot into tension.
Yeah.
And it's a great system. I've used mine a lot this fall.
Yeah.
We used them on that deer hunt in August, and I used one guiding on both my trips, and then we used one for our personal hunting for moose in September as well. So I've spent
a good number of nights now. Probably, let's see here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, probably 6 weeks or so this fall sleeping on that cot.
Nice.
And no cracks in the system. No, it hasn't gotten loose and lost its tension over that time either, which is really nice. The fabric seems to be holding up well. It's nice because it has a little pocket storage on one side of it as well. That's really handy, you know, for just putting the things from your pockets at night. If you want to sleep in your pants, you can put your pocket knife and your Leatherman and your wallet or whatever in those little storage pockets at night. So Mission Mountain is the company. Yeah, they're a great bargain for what they are. They're not ultra lightweight like what's that brand?
Helinox, yeah, the ones you can get at REI.
Yeah, they're expensive and they are very light.
I think they're just over 2.5 pounds.
Yeah,
but they run like $300.
Yeah, they're very expensive and they're a lot harder to set up.
Are they really?
Yeah, it's a lot smaller hardware. Obviously, they're lighter weight, but they're kind of tough to set up until you get the hang of it.
Yeah.
Now the Mission Mountain one's quite literally 5 minutes or less set up. It's very, very easy to set them up. The longest part is putting the main rods together to go down the whole length of the cot. So it's a very easy system, and it's strong. It's worked well, and the biggest thing for me is cots generally tend to stretch out over a while. The fabric after sleeping on it for several nights in a row, you'll notice it starts to get loose, and mine hasn't. And like I said, probably 6 weeks, if not a little bit more, of nights this fall on that cot with no problems at all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, two things I like about that cot is one, if you look at if you're shopping for cots for a hunt and you're looking at the reviews of other purchasers and what they're saying about it, you see a lot of that. You see a lot of that stretching, and especially when you get into that ultralight cot world.
Yeah.
The materials that they use don't hold up, especially if you're a bigger person.
Yeah.
Whether it's you're bigger height wise or weight wise or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
They tend to bend. There's a lot of the competitors for Mission Mountain I saw where the support feet, I guess you'd call them, would start to bend at a certain point, or the bars along the side would start to change shape a little bit, depending just from standard use. Some people were saying just even on like a 1 week hunt, they'd come back and it'd be hard to disassemble the thing. And and these are backcountry people.
Yeah.
So they're in shape, they're fit, but they're just bigger people.
Yeah.
And kind of on that note, with the Mission Mountain, I'm a fairly large individual myself. I'm 6.5 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, before I purchased one, our good buddy Sean had bought some for one of his hunts, and I was out with him in the woods, and he had one set up. I was like, hey man, I'm thinking about buying one of these. Dalton seems to really like it. You've got one now. Let me try it out.
Yeah.
And at 6.5 feet tall, I can lay down on that thing and not be hanging off both sides, which is rare, especially for a lightweight world. When you're a taller individual, a lot of the ultralight stuff, the lightweight backcountry stuff, when you look at even their taller versions, their larger versions, maximum, user 6'2", 6'3", something like that for like sleeping bags and whatnot. So it's nice that there's an affordable, strong option that will accommodate somebody that's a larger individual.
Yeah. Be watching for Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals coming up.
Yeah.
My wife and I bought both those cots on Prime Day, which I wasn't even aware of. It was like 3 months ago.
No.
It's like a weird...
Missed that one.
But my wife told me about it because I was looking at those cots and I said, oh, there's these cots. They're well reviewed and they seem to be what we were looking for, and they're pretty cheap. So it's worth trying them anyway. If they don't work, then we're out $200.
And you've wasted $200 in worse ways, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I spent $200 a week in gas between the two of us. So anyway, but so we ended up buying them. But she said, well, let's wait a day until Prime Day, and we bought them for like $80 a piece.
Nice.
So anyway, but yeah, just Black Friday's coming up and Cyber Monday, so you can keep an eye out for some deals.
Are there any alternative brands you would recommend people look at if they didn't want the Mission Mountain? Are there any that
I haven't seen anything else with as good a reviews and as good a feedback as the Mission Mountain in that price category.
Cool.
So, yeah, I appreciate your question, Jordan. Hopefully you found that in time to pick one up. Your suggestions later on in your email, I appreciate that. We won't go into all that, the rest of Jordan's email, but he had some good suggestions. So just to let you know, we will be looking into that. So
Awesome.
Anyway.
All right. And last but not least for today's episode, Andrew writes into the show asking about hauling out meat. So he says, have you or anyone you know ever used a game cart for packing out your kill? I'm referring to carts typically used for hauling out entire white-tailed deer from the woods in the lower 48. I'm wondering how well they would work for packing moose, bear, or even caribou out of non-motorized areas. I know plenty of people that do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we all do.
Yep.
I'm looking at getting a setup to do this myself. There's several different kinds of carts available to hunters. A lot of people, there's like the literal pull behind ones.
Mhm.
They just kind of look like a reverse double wheel wheelbarrow with a little spot for you to, pull it.
Right.
And I've heard people having decent success with those. You can get different tire shapes and different tire sizes for different terrain.
Different tire shapes?
I guess not shapes. That was kind of
Tread shapes.
That's
So like a fat tire bike.
Or skinnier tires. And, there's also, like if you're wanting to go in on a bicycle, they have bicycle carts that you can put on your mountain bike
Mhm.
and haul things out.
Or your e-bike.
Or your e-bike. You cannot use an e-bike in a non-motorized area. A lot of people have that misconception in Alaska. I have done the research. It is an electric motor, but it is still considered a motor. So I think they kind of turned a blind eye to it for a lot of years. But as of last year, at least, there was an update put out by Fish and Game specifically for that. So, but for mountain bikes, pedal powered mountain bikes. I mean, you can still use those to get into a lot of areas if you have a good enough trail system. The one biggest thing I would say to look at for this in my research getting into this is one, terrain. Make sure the terrain is good for a wheeled pull behind, hand powered wheeled device. Yeah. Because a lot of caribou country, a lot of moose country, there's going to be a lot of swamp.
Yeah.
Unless you're on a trail, a nice graveled trail somewhere in the mountains, and you've scouted it ahead of time, it's a good trail. I actually know somebody that took a cart up into the 5 mile corridor to go after caribou, and he would use that up there. I think he had fat tire bike style tires on his cart.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it a couple times at least, so I mean it couldn't have worked too bad. But he's also a very tough man. So.
Yeah, just pull a sled.
I was gonna say at that point I would just bring a toboggan.
Now, the bigger tires you put on it will be better, like diameter wise.
It'll be better for floating, basically.
Well, for floating, going over objects, rolling over logs.
It's gonna be heavier though.
It will be, but personally, if I was going to do something like that, I would almost think I might design and build something myself.
Yeah. Well, and even those fat tire bikes, I mean, you hear people talk about them all the time. They're harder to pedal. I mean, one guy.
Right.
How would one guy say it's the best, worst way to get anywhere in Alaska? It just apparently sucks. I don't own a fat tire bike, but from everything I've heard about,
probably comes down to the gearing ratio.
Right.
Probably,
yeah. I guess there's something about them. They don't have the same gearing as a standard mountain bike. There might be some brands that do. Don't quote me on that. But from what he was saying,
I've ridden a couple that are quite well suited for the backcountry, but they're also like $3,500.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Not interested.
Those kind of fat tire bikes and even e-bikes, man. If you're looking at e-bikes for getting into some areas,
you can buy a 4-wheeler for that.
Yeah.
And just go into a motorized
like $9,000, depending on which one you're looking at, which configuration.
And you have 15 hours of battery life.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you carry spare batteries.
I'm surprised nobody's, and maybe they have, but I haven't found one that has almost like a stator or an alternator on the tire.
I'm sure
so
some of them,
you're doing the pedal assist, it kind of recharges a little bit on its own.
I think that definitely exists to some
is that
extent,
a thing?
But you're just not going to get the same kind of power.
No, not
it's like those old flashlights that you had when you were a kid that you could wind the top of it.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
And you would wind it for like 30 minutes and think, man, I'm going to get this thing all charged up, and you got like 1 bar.
Yep.
So you're like, you know what? Screw it. Just put new double A's in this thing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised nobody's made an e-cart. You know what I'm saying? Would that be
e-cart?
Oh yeah.
Oh, like an
e-bike
electronic
idea.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
That
Put
might
those
be
big tires on there. And
E-wheeler.
Yeah.
What?
An E4-wheeler.
Well, like a cart. Like so, you're not in it. It's not transporting you. It's just transporting your gear in the game.
So you hit the throttle too hard, you're going to run yourself over.
No, like an e-bike though, like the small.
Well,
little,
maybe you walk behind it. You just
Yeah,
like a walk behind lawnmower or something.
or those walk behind. They've got those like pulling those sleds that are the tracked machines for the snow that'll pull you now.
And all I can see is somebody just getting drug across the tundra behind their e-barrow.
Right. Or the throttle locks up and it's just spinning in circles like those auger videos.
Man, you guys are just.
But
having
I think that's a great idea, Mo. I think
tearing
you should.
me up to-
I think you should. I think you should patent it. I think you should.
Um,
You and Tom Hanks go into business
call
together.
it the Momobile.
If I can get Tom Hanks to show it in action, I'll sell $1 million.
There
right?
we go. One thing I would say to watch out for with using carts, depending on which style you go with, whether you're pulling it behind a bike or pulling it behind yourself, one is practice with the amount of weight you're planning on putting in there. Make sure you can actually pull that before you get, 12 miles back somewhere. That's probably an exaggeration, but a lot of guys do it. So, make sure you can actually pull that cart uphill while it's weighted. Make sure you're not going to lose. It's not going to ruin your physical body or your experience, one of the two. But also look at the weight limitations of the carts, because I can tell you the ones that go behind bicycles typically have a weight rating of about 125 pounds, give or take.
Yeah.
So some are a little more, some are a little less, but you want to make sure, because you're not going to find at least a light cart pull behind for a bicycle that you would want to bring into the backcountry. That's going to be much higher of a weight rating than that.
Yeah.
And that's why they work so good in the lower 48 for deer, because a gutted deer, you're looking somewhere in that ballpark usually, unless it's a monster, a big one. And some of the parts of the lower 48 that breed monster deer.
Or Canada.
And if you're pulling a deer out, you can, if let's say it is a big one that beats that weight limit, you cut it in half, you're making 2 trips.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
On a moose, if you have a 125 pound limit, that's a quarter at a time.
Yeah.
You might get a little bit of burger in there depending on the size of the moose.
If that.
But yeah.
You might be trimming a quarter just to make it fit.
I would say on some moose, you might be lucky to get a quarter on there. So keep that in mind too, depending on where you're going to be going, what you're planning on hauling out. You might be making, 8 trips back and forth trying to get that whole thing out on a cart.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind while you're shopping.
I think the way that I've seen those carts used the most up here is with bear baiters.
Yeah.
They've got some kind of a dirt road access or they ride a nice flat trail through the birch wood trees and there's no swamp through the hardwoods, and they don't want to ride their 4-wheeler all the way into the bear bait, or they're walking in somewhere, but they've got nice flat dry ground.
Right.
As long as it's flat and you clear all the stumps and fallen trees out of the way or whatever and get a clear path into your bait, you can haul all the dog food you need to restock that week in that cart, 3 bags, 50 pounds each, and a jug full of grease. And you can wear your little day pack for sitting in the stand that night. I think it could be very useful in that case.
Absolutely, for a bait, yeah.
Just
make sure on the physical side of things, if you're planning on going any distance or up any hills, weigh that thing down with what you're intending to put in it, whether it's a moose quarter, a full black bear, whatever it might be, and make sure you can make as many trips as you need to get the animal out. Because the last thing you want is to get on your 3rd trip out of the woods carrying that 3rd quarter and you're whooped.
Yeah.
And you don't know if you can make it another 4 trips to get the rest of the animal out.
Just bring a pack frame and leave it in your truck if nothing else.
Right. Yep. So great tool. Don't get yourself in trouble with it.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions you would like featured on the show, be sure to write us in. You hit us up at our social medias. If you search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, if you go to the website, thenorthernhunter.com, we've got the contact button there that'll send an email to us. And again, any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, send them to the email. We love talking to people, and we're very easy to talk to, not just on the mics, but off the mics also.
Yeah.
So while you're on the website, if you wouldn't mind going to the shop page or the partners page and supporting the show and helping us grow a little bit, the shop page has some merch in there. We got hats, hoodies, and t-shirts. The partners page has content from a bunch of different companies that have all decided to sponsor the show and give us discount codes that you can use. It's all great gear, get you out in the backcountry, help you be more successful, and it's all very useful stuff. We've kept our sponsors very hunting oriented.
Yeah.
So if you use the discount code, it helps them, helps us, and we appreciate all the help. And the cheapest way to support us is to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Give us a rating. 5 stars is always best. And be sure to share the show with your friends. Leave us a written review. All of that helps get this show in front of more people and help spread the word. So we're signing off for today. But until next time, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.
Nice.
I like that.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to STEALTHYHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.